Welcome back to Blender Daily. Today I want to show you step by step how you can create this shot yourself with Blender. All the files that I used can be downloaded with the link in the video description if you want to follow along. Let's get started. Alright, so this is the footage that we're going to work with in this project. You can download this with the link in the video description if you want to follow along with me. So let's get started and open up a new blend file. And first of all, I'm going to make this full screen and also enable the screencast keys add-on. So in the bottom left corner, you can see all the shortcuts that I press. Then let's also adjust a few scene settings. So I want to bring the resolution to 4K, which is 3840 by 2160. Then also bring up the frame rate to 30 FPS. And in the render properties, I'm going to use Eevee. And we don't need any samples for this project, so bring this down to 1. And under color management, switch the view transform from filmic to standard in order to get correct colors in this project. Then we can click on plus and open up a new motion tracking workspace so we can start tracking our footage. I close those top two windows since we don't need them. Then go to open and load in our footage. Open clip. Let's close this up, and we don't want to use the whole clip. Instead, we're going to use the frames 180 to 500. This is the part of the footage that we're going to use. And before we start tracking, I want to click prefetch so it loads the whole footage into memory, which will make the tracking a lot faster. Okay, so then let's start tracking. For our trackers, I want to switch the motion model from location to affine. And in the extra settings, I want to bring the margin up to 20 pixels. Now we're not going to manually place trackers in the scene this time. Instead, we're going to click on Detect Features, which will automatically add trackers. The first time we're doing this, we're going to be on the first frame, which is frame 180. And I don't want to have any trackers on the dog, since the dog is moving and this won't work for our camera solve. So I double press A to deselect everything, press C to get this selection tool, select all those trackers that are on the dog, and X to delete. Maybe let's also delete those in here in the background right here. So again, C, X to delete, and alright, I also want to get rid of those down here. So C, select them, X to delete. Okay, I'm happy with this. So again, press A to select all of them and use this button to track forwards. This will take a moment, and if you look closely, you can see that some of those trackers get lost. Some of them make mistakes or don't track up until the end. This doesn't matter because we're going to clean it up in the end. And yeah, also if you take a look at the graph editor, you can see that a lot of them do weird stuff. They won't work, but we're going to remove them later on. So don't worry too much about them now. Yeah, a few of them tracked up until the end. So let's go to the last frame. Press A to select all of them and H to hide them for now. Then we're going to press Detect Features again. This time on the last frame, as I said. And again, deselect them, double tap A. C to select all those trackers on the dog. I also want to remove those in the background right here, since they won't really work. X to delete, and A to select all of them and use this button to track backwards. You could also use the shortcuts Ctrl T to track forwards and Ctrl Shift T to track backwards. And this seemed to work pretty good. A lot of the trackers are still around. And now we're through. Okay, let's press Alt H to bring back all the ones that we hid before. And also press Alt D, so we're only seeing the active trackers. And this looks pretty good. We have a lot of trackers in here. A lot of them seem to work pretty good. However, we need to clean it up a bit. So in order to do so, we must first make our first camera solve. So in order to do this, go to track, and under camera, we want to add the sensor width of our camera. I recorded this with an iPhone 8, so the sensor width is 4.6 millimeters. And I don't know what the focal length was, so I just leave it, and under refine, enable focal length, so Blender will try to estimate it. Then we also need to add the keyframe A and B. Since we started on frame 180, I'm going to use frame 180 and 500. You might get an error that looks something like this. If you have this, just bring keyframe B closer to keyframe A until it starts working. But in this case, frame 500 should work, since we have a lot of trackers throughout the whole shot. Then, yeah, I think that's all. We can click on Solve Camera Motion. And now Blender will try to estimate the movement of our camera in 3D space. Let's see if this worked, and we got an average solve error of 4.46. This is too high. We want to bring it lower, but I don't think this will be a problem once we get those weird trackers out. So in order to remove them, we can go to Clean Up, choose Filter Tracks, and this will filter out all the trackers that have a weird behavior. So the threshold is currently at 5, which I think is too low. So let's maybe try 12, which selected 144 trackers. Maybe bring it even higher, 14, 108 trackers. I think that's okay. So press X to delete them. Solve the camera motion again. And let's see if it improved. Alright, it did. So now we're at the solve error of 1.07 pixels. Usually I try to go below an error of 1. So let's refine this even more. We can also use this clean tracks option and select all the trackers that have an error higher than 1.5. X to delete. Solve camera motion again. And I'm pretty sure that we're below 1 now. Alright, 0.74, which is pretty good. So let's clean them once more. This time all the trackers with an error higher than 1. X to delete. Solve camera motion. And now we're even at 0.65, which is really good. So let's go with this. Okay, so now to bring this into our 3D viewport, we can use this set up tracking scene button, which you can see now. When I scrub through the timeline, our camera starts moving. And we can also go to those viewport overlay settings and enable motion tracking. So now we can see all those points in the 3D viewport that we tracked. And maybe it's also go in here and bring down the size. You can see that those trackers have the shape of our stairs, which means that it worked pretty good. Now this is just floating around here. We want to place the stairs at the origin of our world, so we're going to do this in a moment. But first I want to delete those objects that it automatically created. And it also made a background collection that we don't need, so press X to delete it. And also this background view layer is unnecessary for our project, so let's remove it as well. Then we can go back to the motion tracking workspace. Select 3 points that are on this plane. Okay, I'm gonna select those 3. Just hold down Shift and click on them to select multiple points at once. Click on floor. So this will become the floor. Then I want to select this tracker and make it set origin. So now you can see that those stairs are placed on the origin and this plane is aligned with the ground. So when I press numpad 0, we get into camera view and you can see that this point is at the world origin. Now I want to align this x-axis with our stairs. So I select the camera, switch the pivot point to 3D cursor. Now I can press R set to rotate this and align our red x-axis with this corner of the stairs. Maybe also press G, Y, still with the camera selected to align this. Maybe rotate it a bit, R set. Okay, this is great. Take a look at this, and if we scrub through the timeline, this axis is still aligned with the ground. This is perfect, so let's bring in a plane, Shift A, add a plane. It's way too big, so enter edit mode, scale it down, and G, Y to align it with this edge. Then go to edge selection. Select this edge, E set to extrude it upwards. And just try to extrude this, EY. And align everything with those stairs. E set, bring it upwards. EY over here. And I think we need one more. E set up here. Then also align this edge, G, Y, and over here, and E set. Bring it down. Now we have roughly matched those stairs. Let's make it a bit bigger. GX, bring this over here. And GX, bring this right over here. Now if we take a look at those tracking markers, you can see that our stairs don't really align right here and right here. So let's fix this. For this, I'm going to switch to face selection. And I think this one aligns pretty well with our trackers. This one as well. Maybe we can bring this one a bit down, G set. To make this align as good as possible. This one is definitely off a bit, G, Y. Bring this to the center of those points. G set, bring this down. And GY. Also align it with those points. Alright, so now we can go back into camera view. And our stair perfectly aligns with our footage. This is great. So let's turn off those tracking points. We don't need them anymore. And I think it would be great to give those stairs a bit of a bevel to make those corners a bit rounder. So let's add a bevel modifier. Bring the amount way down. Give it just a slight bevel. Let's increase the segment, maybe 5 segments. Right click and shade smooth. And I want to apply this bevel modifier since we're gonna make a UV projection afterwards. Alright, so let's do this right now and project our footage onto this plane. So we go to frame 180, which is our first frame. Then open up a shader editor. And I think our stairs are too big, since they just need to cover the dog through the whole shot. So I'm gonna select those edges again, GX. And just make sure that it covers the dog. Go to the last frame. The same on this side. GX. Align it right here. Go out, go back to frame 180. Can turn off X-ray and switch to the shader preview. Let's just directly switch to the rendered view. And in the render properties, I want to switch from enable transparency in the film settings so we can see our footage in the background. Then also go to the camera settings and under background image, bring up the opacity so you can really see this background. And now let's give this stairs its texture. So make a new shader. Delete the principal BSDF and instead bring in an emission texture, which is, oh no, not texture, shader, an emission shader. Plug this in here. Then add an image texture. But we're not going to use an image. Instead, we're going to add our footage. Alright, and we want to use frame 180, so just bring this offset to 180 and enable auto refresh. Not cyclic, auto refresh. Okay, now I got it. We have frame 180. It is way distorted because we haven't UV unwrapped it yet. So let's tab into edit mode. Press Ctrl R to add a lot of those loop cuts. Then A to select everything and U project from view. Make sure that when you do this you are on frame 180 and within the camera view, otherwise this won't work. So now we have this footage perfectly projected onto our stairs and our effect is already working. Now we have an issue right here and here. This is because those parts of the stairs were out of frame when I did the projection. So to fix this, just switch from repeat to clip in the image texture. And I want to make those parts transparent. So I bring in a shader transparent BSDF and a mix shader. Where is it? Right here, mix shader. Mix them together and use the alpha of our footage. Now we don't have any transparency because we're using Eevee and Eevee doesn't support transparency by default. So we need to go into our shader editor, press N to open up the side panel and under options for the blend mode switch to alpha clip. So now we have this transparency and our effect is working pretty good. Okay, so that's almost it. We need to do just one more thing in the compositor. So let's go to the rendering tab and press F12. And this already looks pretty good because we already have a node set up in the compositor, which it automatically created when we clicked on this setup tracking scene in the motion tracking workspace. But we don't want to use everything of this node setup. So for example, we only need one render layer. We don't need this alpha over and we don't need the undistortion node. So we're just going to use this movie clip node, plug it into the scale. So that it is scaled to the render size, then the image into our alpha over. And now this is working. This looks pretty good. However, if you take a close look, you can see that we have those hard edges right here. And we can improve this a bit by adding in a dilate erode node in the compositor. Dilate erode. Take the alpha of our render layer, bring it in here, which will give us this black and white mask of the alpha channel. switch it from step to feather, and give it a value of maybe -25, which will make those edges a lot smoother. Then we can use this for the mix factor of the alpha over node. And now we get a bit smoother edges, and those seams won't be visible that well. So this is what it was before, and when I press F12 to update, it now looks a lot better. Okay, so that's basically it. Let's check a few frames. Just go to any frame that you want, press F12 to render, and see what this frame looks like. And I think it all looks pretty good. So let's render this out. To do so, go to the output properties. I don't want to render it in 4K, so I bring this down to 50%. You could leave this at 100% if you want to render in 4K. However, I think 1920 by 1080 should be enough. Leave the frame rate, and for the file format, we're going to use FFmpeg video. For the encoding, use the MP4 preset. Then click on this folder, select an output folder where you want to save it. I'm just going to call this dog. Accept, and I think that's everything. So we're ready to render our animation. But first let's press Ctrl S to save our file. I'm going to call this rec, and then just go up to render, render animation, or use the shortcut Ctrl F12. And this should render extremely fast, since as I said before, we're only using one sample, and we are not doing any shading in this project. So I'll come back to you in a few minutes once the render is finished for me. Okay, my render is done, so let's go and take a look at it. I'm gonna go to the output folder, and here we have this MP4 file, and I think this came out pretty cool. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting and you could learn something new. I am Nick from Blender Daily. See you in the next one.